because the defense you have right now, I think, is the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime of watching this franchise. But it's a talent issue. It's a coaching issue. It's an everything issue. And when you don't do anything well, it's really hard from our seat to identify the biggest culprit, because there are probably several on that list. But they will be in the market for a defensive coordinator. On Friday, Jay Gruden joined me on my podcast, as he does every Friday during football season, right through the Super Bowl. And we were talking, and I wanted to play some of this back for you because he did get into, after talking about the game on Christmas Day against the Cowboys, he did get into sort of the defensive coordinator conversation around here, talked about some of his experiences. Remember, everybody was always asking Jay to fire whoever he had and hire somebody new. But the conversation began with this long season, even though it's a sprint of a season. He said to me, it's amazing that we're here already at week 17. And I asked him about some of those long seasons, non-playoff seasons, and what it felt like. Did it feel like it had gone on too long by the time you got to week 17?
Yeah, that helps to have a good team. It goes a lot faster than when your team is struggling. You're counting the Wednesdays down. Okay, I got 16 Wednesdays left. Oh, my God. I got to get through this.
Yeah.
But it was fun, working with the players and the coaches and all that stuff. And despite your record, sometimes you're still trying to develop players. You're still trying to come up with a game plan and trying to win games and beat the opposing coaching staff. And the competitive juices are still there. The winning's not, but still, it's still fun to get in there. But the days can get longer, especially when it gets colder. It's dark when you go in, and it's dark when you leave the office. It's like, oh my God, you feel like a vampire. But some seasons are tougher than others, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's easier for us. On the field yesterday, there were just players and numbers. Now, it's been this way for Washington pretty much all season long, where you've needed, a legitimate program each week to identify who's out there and who isn't. But do you remember a late season meaningless game where you discovered somebody where you're like, oh my God, I had no idea that he could play this well?
I do not remember that. We had a couple of young guys that I thought would be a lot better than they were, that played well late in the season, but nobody that really emerged as a star. That's tough. But we went through so many players my last couple of years there. I was with my son last night. We were going over the roster and we played the Seahawks that game in Seattle. He goes, I'll bet you can't tell me who the left tackle was. And I couldn't think of who it was. It was TJ Cummings.
TJ Cummings. Yeah.
I wouldn't have got that in a million years.
Right.
And my right guard was Tyler Catalina.
Yep.
My left tackle is the kid we picked up. He got hurt too. I can't remember his name either. So we went through so many players, but any young player that came up that really developed towards the end of the year, I really don't recall. We had guys like Rob Kelly that played well in training camp that we never would have thought in a million years would have been a starter. He was like seventh guy on the depth chart. He ended up starting and having 100 yards rushing in the first half against the Rams, for God's sake. So guys like that emerged from nowhere somehow, just the reps that they get in preseason and in the games. Sometimes guys just turn it on when the lights cut on. Some guys go the other way, and it's important for Washington to identify those players this late in the year, because you never really know what happens once they get on the field in a competitive situation.
Did your son mention Ari Kwanjo? Because he started for you.
We got him from the Raven practice. Well, he was on our team. We let him go, but he was on the Raven practice squad, I believe, that week, and we picked him up, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday, and he started Sunday.
Here was the starting offensive line. T.J. Clemmings at left tackle, Ari Kwanjo at left guard, Chase Rouillet at center, Tyler Catalina at right guard, and Morgan Moses at right tackle. But do you remember who your starting wide receivers were?
That was Brian Quick, Josh Doxson, and who's the other one?
Your favorite.
Ryan
Grant. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. You had some beauties out there on defense, too.
Vernon Davis. Sprinkle and Vernon Davis.
Yeah, you had some beauties on defense, including Evander Hood, who played for you. I don't know. I'm I'm
Call him Ziggy.
Oh, that's
awesome.
right. Ziggy Hood. Okay. Yes, of course. Now I remember Ziggy. Yeah. It's written down in Pro Football References, Evander Hood. I forgot it was Ziggy Hood. Yeah, I mean, that still to me was one of the most improbable wins of the last 20 years. That in the Dallas game on Monday night with Colt McCoy. But this one was so improbable because of the players that you trotted out onto the field. I mean, you had that offensive line was decimated.
Yeah, it was brutal. We're teaching the snap count on Friday. It's 2-minute drills, how the mechanics of the silent count. These guys have never done it together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a nightmare.
So what did you make of Washington's 30-23 loss to Dallas yesterday?
They played hard. I think Josh played pretty well. Just the time of possession early in the game. They took any rhythm out of Washington's offense. Dallas held the ball forever. I think Washington had one drive in the first quarter, and that was it. It was 21-7, so they were playing catch up the whole way. But,
21-3. Yeah,
21-3. So they played hard. I was impressed the way they played. I would have liked to see Coach Quinn, do an onside quick kick there at the end instead of kicking off. The same situation was Chicago versus Green Bay. When Ben Johnson kicked the field goal, then they did the onside kick and got it and went down and scored and won the game. Went to overtime, but because I figured they wouldn't get off the field. But anyway, other than that, I was impressed the way they played. They played hard, and Josh Johnson, I was impressed with. Terry still played hard. Debo played hard. He ran hard. They played with a sense of purpose and competitiveness and a competitive spirit. They just weren't quite good enough.
Do you know how many snaps Dallas had in the game, even, counting every snap, penalties, etc.?
Felt like 90.
92.
Golly, that's a lot.
92. Washington had 44. Dallas snapped the ball 45 more times on offense.
It felt like that. It felt like Dallas won by 30, but they won by 7 or 10, whatever it was.
It's amazing. When you have 45 fewer offensive snaps and lose by 7, that's really something else. Actually, it's almost miraculous. I started off the show by just saying, look, there were some defensive plays made in this game, but the story of the season after injuries is just how god-awful this defense is. I mean, it's been terrible all year. It was terrible last year. You were a head coach here with some really good offensive teams, offensive talent, and could never get off the field when it mattered. This team, here's another one for you. Dallas was 6 for 6 on fourth downs and 8 for 20, Jay. They had 20 third down attempts in the game. 20.
Jesus Christ, that's insanity. That's insane.
I mean, how do they fix this between now and week 1 next year?
Well, they got a lot of work to do, that's for sure. I don't know where to begin, really. I think secondary-wise, they need safety help. They need another corner. They definitely need linebacker help. They got to be able to run. And then we haven't even started on the defensive line, which is really lacking in a lot of areas as far as getting after the quarterback. You got to get to the quarterback somehow, some way with a 4-man rush right now. They're way below average in doing that. They had some good rushes yesterday. The Newton had a couple sacks, which is good to see. They've had some good efforts by some other guys, but for the most part, they need some game wreckers, and they don't really have any. So I don't know where I'd begin. I'd probably begin with a pass rusher if I could find one. Obviously, Von Miller won't be here next year, I wouldn't think. They need an edge player. And that you got to probably look at replacing Bobby at some point. So you need a guy that can call the damn defenses and run the show. So they got a lot of work to do on defense, and we haven't even started with the game. A game changer on offense too. There may be another back, although Merritt looked pretty good. Bill Merritt looked pretty good yesterday. I don't know if he's the answer full time, but I would definitely start on the defensive side of the ball if I'm looking at the 8th pick in the draft and moving forward.
I mean, you haven't even mentioned defensive coordinator because it's not going to be Joe Witt Jr. So, you've gone through this. You had Haslett, you had Joe Barry, you had Minuski. There was always cries for you to swap out defensive coordinators because the defense was so bad and you were an offensive head coach. What do they have to do on that front? Does Quinn have to find somebody outside of his tree of guys, not Raheem Morris, not Jeff Ulbrich, not Al Harris? Does he have to think about it, Jim Schwartz, if he becomes available, or go, pay big for Brian Flores to leave Minnesota? What do they have to do from a defensive coordinator standpoint?
I think this is what Dan Quinn has to decide. Do I want to really have, put all my time into being a defensive coordinator and calling defenses and coming up with the game plan again? Or do I want to pass it along to somebody else? If I pass it along to somebody else, then I think I have to go outside the building. Obviously, I can't put Joe Witt back in there, so we got to go outside the building. Who is that? He's been around the NFL for a long time and called defenses for a long time, so I'm sure he has a great Rolodex of names that could be very successful in calling defenses here in Washington. So I think that's something he's going to have to decide: who's available, who I can get, who would really take this defense to where I want to go with the same type of ideas, the same type of mentality that I have if I were calling plays. So I'm sure he's got some guys in mind. It's just a matter of, does he want to do it himself, or does he want somebody else to do it? Who that might be is, I'm sure there'll be a lot of good guys out there. Every year there's going to be 7 or 8 staffs that get axed, and there's going to be 6 or 7 pretty good defensive coordinators out there available.
Do you ever look back, I'm sure we've talked about this before, to that stretch here where, you had bad defensive teams for the most part, and there were always cries, right, for a change in defensive coordinator? Do you have any regrets about, something you did do or something you didn't do?
Yeah, I tried. I interviewed some pretty good defensive coordinators.
Todd Bowles.
Todd Bowles. I had Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio chose not to come. I had Mike Vrabel. They wouldn't let him out of the contract at Houston. He wasn't a coordinator. He was like a senior assistant or something like that. So I thought I could take him out of New England or Houston when he was at Houston. Tried some other guys. I tried Gunther. They wouldn't let him out. I wanted a double-A Zimmer type defense when I was at Cincinnati. I liked what Zimmer did, so Gunther was the next one. He couldn't. Cincinnati wouldn't let him out. So I tried a lot of guys. I didn't settle, but Joe Barry was a decent football coach, obviously, and Manusky had the knowledge. He was a defense coordinator at Indianapolis, and with Manusky, I got Jim Tomsula to be the defensive line coach. That was a package deal. Tomsula would only come if Manusky was defensive coordinator, and these guys were all good coaches. We just didn't really have the firepower to really help them be successful in the schemes that they wanted to run.
Tomsula was a good coach, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a good football coach for sure. The only thing is they come from the old school 3-4 2-gap system. I wanted to be more of a gap shooting under 3-4 defense. With Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, I didn't want them sitting at the line of scrimmage, holding up the defensive linemen and freeing up the linebackers. I wanted them to penetrate and be more gap guys and get up the field and create havoc with stunts and all that stuff. But we're more of the old school 2-gap, hole in there and free up the linebackers. But it's different strokes for different folks.
I'm guessing you weren't surprised that Josh Johnson looked more than competent in the game.
No, Josh is a pro. He's a true pro. He's a smart human being. He can pick up systems in a minute. He's been everywhere. He's seen every type of concept versus every coverage. He's been a backup. As a backup, he's very involved in games and studying the film and studying games. And, his accuracy is not what you want it to be, but he's very athletic and a great guy, and definitely functional as a backup still to this day.
We would, joke a little bit during the course of the season about the fan rush to crown Krosky Merritt or fit Krosky Merritt for a gold jacket, 3 games into his career. But now that we've seen him, and Rodriguez was inactive yesterday, I guess he was sick. He's had some games like, I went back, like yesterday's game was, with the exception of the 72-yard touchdown run, which was the bulk of his yardage, still had some good runs. He had really not broken a long one all season long, but the game was comparable to the Charger game where he was 14 for 111 and this one 11 for 105. So what do you think they have in Krosky Merritt, Bill?
It's hard. I don't know, because after that Charger game, I thought he was going to emerge as a true number one guy there. He's going to just get 15, 20, 25 carries a game, and that didn't happen. He kind of went the other way. It was kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. He looked good yesterday, and he's had some moments of looking like he's got a really good burst and can run through tackles. And but there's something there that I just feel like he's missing. I don't know if it's pass protection, catching the ball out of the backfield. consistency in reading holes, and I don't know. The jury's still out for me on him. I don't know if he's a true number one back for next year, but he has shown flashes of being that. I think hopefully for Washington's sake, they do feel like him and Rodriguez can carry the load. They don't have to worry about a draft pick early in the rounds or sign a big-time free agent at running back. So they can use that for other positions that they desperately need. That's what they have to decide. Are we good enough at back with the guys we have, or do we have to, if the Notre Dame back is there at 8 or 7, do we take the Notre Dame back? I mean, hell. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Those are decisions they have to make as well. Are they good enough where we can use those picks and that capital for other positions, which we desperately need, or do we need to get game-changing back to help Jaden out? So those are tough decisions. I would, if there's a superstar available in the draft, I would have to seriously think about it, because that is a very important spot as well.
Jay Gruden from late in the week last week, on the day following the loss to the Cowboys on Christmas Day, talking about various defensive scenarios. Interesting. He wanted to hire Vic Fangio. He wanted to hire Todd Bowles at one point. There's a whole story around the Todd Bowles availability the year that Jay wanted Todd Bowles. There was a lot of discussion among many people in the know that, there was a real, resistance to come join this organization for Todd Bowles. He had so many options, and even though this was a team he had played for and won a Super Bowl with, there were apparently a lot of people, including people in the organization, that said, you don't want to come here, not as long as Dan Snyder, owns the team. And so he chose to go elsewhere. That was a real struggle, though, for those years. Minuski and Hazlitt and Joe Barry, the defensive coordinators probably weren't the issues as much as defensive talent was. They were old and they were slow defensively during those 2015, 2016 seasons, in which they were very good offensively. And there are some parallels, because the defense you have right now, I think, is the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime of watching this franchise. But it's a talent issue. It's a coaching issue. It's an everything issue. And when you don't do anything well, it's really hard from our seat to identify the biggest culprit, because there are probably several on that list. But they will be in the market for a defensive coordinator.